We went in about 1.5 kilometers, and it was extraordinary. It was a huge cave with some massive flowstone formations. He was conscious. I was amazed, and he's got this big gash in his skull and blood splattered all over the place, and and he's there sort of going, "Leave me, leave me." By 1984, we were pretty fed up with our junkie-infested guest house in Chiang Mai and the changing city and the whole scene there. We decided we really wanted to come out where we felt comfortable, out here in the hills in Bang Pa district of Mae Hong Son province. Beautiful limestone, forested mountains, clean air, quaint hill tribe villages. It was just a very nice place to be, and we figured we couldn't go too wrong. We hadn't saved much money after 7 years of trekking, maybe $1,000, so we didn't have much to lose. So we thought we'd just move in and start our dream, start a new adventure in life, and that's what we did. We had this friend, Paco, a blind guy, American guy. He was a photographer, blind photographer. He had tunnel vision. He could see about 3%. And he loaned us 50,000 baht, which was a bit over $2,000 to buy this Land Rover. Now this heap of crap, this decrepit old bloody Land Rover, which sort of looked all right on the outside. It was about 25 years old. It was, one of those ones with the headlights on the inside, the Series 1 or Series 2 or whatever. And, and the sleazy guy who sold us the thing, Dude says, "Look, I don't have a driver's license. Can you chuck that in with a car?" He says, "Yeah, no worries." So, Dude had never driven a car in her life. And so she ended up getting a license along with the car, and the registration was owned by a cop, and there was no registration, and he'd filed the engine number off and done something else, and he had to spend a day down bribing the registration officials. We come up to the village where I am right now. In '84, we'd trekked here many times. We knew a few people in the village, and we come up and talk to the old people. And we didn't have any money to buy land, and in those days, hill tribe people, they didn't buy land. They didn't know who owned the land. It was just first in, best dressed. So we said to a few of the old people in the village, can we just take this block of land, from over here down to here sort of thing, and a nice spot by the river just upstream from this cave that we thought would have to be an incredible tourist attraction. And it was all very remote and unknown back then. And they sort of had a few reservations. One old guy said, "Well, they're probably going to convert the village to Christianity or something." And so I guarantee that's not going to happen. We're not missionaries. And we just moved in, cleared bit of bamboo and trash wood off the place, and got a couple of local guys to help us build our first little bungalow, somewhere to live. We go out in the old Land Rover and drag in dead trees from the Hill Tribe fields and go and chop ridiculous amounts of bamboo and drag it in, and basically built the house for very little money. Back in those days, our village was full of opium addicts. There was lots of them, and these guys would go out and pick up the scrap timber from the bush sawmills. There's two-man saws where everyone was illegally sawing teak trees out in the forest to build their houses. So, like I said, we didn't have any money to invest, so for $5 a board, it was pretty cheap. By that time, there was a couple of tourists starting to come through, and they put a bus route then to Mae Son. It was still a dirt road. So we went out to the bus stop and dragged a few unsuspecting tourists off buses and say, you're spending the night out at our place. And and it was like, I don't know, 25 baht a night or something like that, which meant we could buy 5 boards, For each tourist we could get off the bus, we could maybe get 10 more boards. So bit by bit we'd get more boards and eventually sort of stack them around the place until we had something that resembled a house. Hi, where are you from?
Australia, mate.
Australia?
Australia.
How the fuck are ya?
Good, mate.
Morning.
I'm a Croat.
What's that?
From Croatland.
Oh, nice.
Bavaria.
Bavarian. It was a big time for backpacking back then. All the travellers who, we said, we're travellers, we're not tourists, we don't do what tourists do. It was adventure, and people were going to. There was a bit of an ego trip too. They're looking for the most remote places, new places, and they go and tell somebody else, "Hey, I've just been down to this island. There's no tourists down there. Oh, it's great." And so there was word of mouth. There was this grapevine that was just worked so fast. Within a couple of months, when we opened in 1985, we had 20 people arriving a day. We had 30, 40 people sleeping all over the place. It just took off. It went ballistic. We had no electricity. We were cooking firewood out the back. It was really basic. We had breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and so for about 100 baht a day, which was then about $5 a day, you could have 3 meals and stay here and sleep around the fireplace or whatever, and it was a very good atmosphere. We'd only just set up the lodge, and I was looking for something adventurous to do, and we'd seen a few locals Shan men on bamboo rafts on the Kong River, and they said they'd raft down to Pai in the dry season. So I thought, well, this looks like fun. So I grabbed a couple of guests, and we walked way down the Kong River to past Susar Waterfalls. So there's a big stand of bamboo down in there that I knew about. And this is the big Maypo, huge bamboos, some of the biggest bamboo in the world. And so we went and chopped down, need about 8 big pieces for one raft. And so we chopped these down. It was a real effort to drag them out to the river, and we got down there and we somehow bound these things together, and we started floating down the river, and there was a Shan fisherman there, and he was laughing at us, he's just saying these things aren't going to make it. I said, what do you mean? He says, well, they're going to break up on the waterfall, and nobody told me about a waterfall. Sure enough, the raft did break up a few times, including on the waterfall he was talking about, and we managed to tie them back up together again, and we did make it to Mae Son. And after that, we got better and better at building rafts, and started running 3-day trips down the Kong and the Pai River. That was fantastic, until one trip we were with a tour group from the UK, and the river went into flood, and we almost lost a few of the passengers on that one. That was a really scary trip. People were being knocked off by branches down rapids. We were pulling people out of the river. It was a total freak out of a trip. It was just way too dangerous. We're going to lose guests, and we didn't really want to do that. So I talked to a friend, Steve. I said, is there any way we can get some boats, inflatables, anything down in this river? And Steve had been doing kayaking in Australia. He said, sure, we give it a go. So we got a few, and been doing it for more than 10 years now. Burma district is full of limestone. This is the rock that caves form in. And in this karst landscape, you have disappearing streams, you have sheer cliffs, you have little knobs and bumps. It's a fantastic sort of geology and geography of the area. We fell in love with this place. I knew there was caves waiting to be explored that no humans have ever entered. And when our first guests started arriving, they wanted to join in. My initial days of caving out here were pretty basic. I'd hook up with a few guests from our lodge. We'd have a few maybe Chinese flashlights with a bit of plastic string hung around our necks, or a kerosene lantern if we're lucky, and we'd push deep into caves where no humans had ever been before. We'd never been illuminated by any light whatsoever, and it was so exciting. We couldn't stop. You get to one corner and you just want to see what's around the next corner, and it was, I'd never done anything so exciting in my life.
Don't get the video line wet.
It got to a point where it was all getting a little bit too much, where we just didn't have the lights, didn't have the experience, the equipment, didn't really know what I was doing in the exploration of some of these caves. And they were big, they were world-class stuff. We needed some experts, and that was when, through coincidence more than anything, Dunkley's group of Australian cavers started coming over for mini expeditions, when we discovered scores of caves and pushed them to the limits. It got John Dunkley hooked for the next decade or so. He was back almost every year.
They would first turn their attention to further exploration of the fast-flowing underground river of Tam Nam Lang. It was not going to be easy.
It was a grueling trip. There was parts of the river where you couldn't swim against the current. Fortunately, Attila, who was a very strong swimmer, had bought a pair of flippers, so he would power his way up with these flippers and a rope tied around him and get up to a section where he could pull us up in this little inflatable boat we had in there.
They would manage to get a full 7 kilometres into the cave, and it was on an impressive scale. A huge boulder slope eventually led into upper levels with a stunning display of huge stalagmites. It was an astonishing start.
We'd explored Tam Nam Lang. We'd got quite deep up inside it. We still hadn't got to the end. And then I knew about this Susar waterfalls. It was where this water was just pouring out of the base of the cliff somewhere over these beautiful travertine waterfalls. It was a remote location. It was about a 4-hour walk down there. So one day, Dew and I trekked down there, and we camped the night up near where we thought the water was coming out of the cliff. And the next morning, I walked up over a rockfall, and sure enough, there's this rather large entrance chamber there. There was a strong stream in there, and there's some particularly bad air. There's a 5% constant CO2 in Susar, 100 times more than we're breathing outside. So it's very laborious breathing. It's right on the edge of life-threatening. So we sent a couple of people up there, Kerry and I think it was John Taylor, Kerry Hamilton, and they went up in a little rubber dinghy, and about 600 metres inside, they got to this roaring waterfall, and Kerry was trying to climb the waterfall, which was quite difficult. It's set in basalt. And he got part way up the waterfall and he saw this extraordinary little creature clinging to the rock face. And he thought, well, this is obviously troglodytic. He couldn't see any eyes, so he popped the thing in his mouth. When he finally got back to his backpack, 10, 15 minutes later, he put it inside a little collection tube with a bit of alcohol. And it turned out to be a fish, a very extraordinary fish that has no eyes whatsoever, has these rather large fins that it uses like a gecko to walk up waterfalls, even vertical or more than vertical waterfalls, in and out of the water. And it turns out it was in the end, it was a new genus, Cryptotora tamicola.
The final chambers reached in Tam Nam Lung were not far from a deep shaft on the surface. Could it be there was a connection? John himself hadn't the training to be able to descend it, but the Australians could.
You ready? Well, what I'll do is I'll throw it out. You start the timing. You ready? Fuck!
100 metres deep, 100 metres wide, it's got a forest down the bottom. No humans had ever been down there. So we rigged up Kerry Hamilton and John Taylor, and they did the abseil down to the bottom. They walked around the base of the well. They were looking for an extension, hoping to get into Tam Nam Lung. And they couldn't find anything, but it was an extremely hot day. I remember it was about 45 degrees in the shade. They came out. Kerry, of course, had forgotten to take any water with him, so he was totally dehydrated. And later that night, we're back at the lodge, and I was sleeping in a room just by the main room, and I heard this thumping, this boom, boom, boom on the floor. So I woke up and got out, and Kerry had his face twisted up. He was thumping his leg on the floor, and he was paralysed in the right-hand side of his body. He'd had a stroke. We had to wait till the morning before we could get a truck out and get him to Pai Hospital and Chiang Mai Hospital where they could do the CT scans. Well, this was also extremely worrisome for Kerry because he was the toughest caver on the group. There's two waterfalls inside Susar Cave where the fish live. And the second waterfall is 6 metres sheer, pounding water, overhanging virtually, soft rock. You couldn't bolt your way up it. For many, many years, he was determined that he was going to get enough strength back and he was going to conquer this waterfall. And it wasn't until 1990 that we got a group of Australian cavers up there who had the time and the energy, and our mission was to get Kerry to the top of the waterfall in Susar and explore the upper section. Well, we spent 3 days inside the cave, again in very bad air, and we eventually had to chop long pieces of bamboo to build this scaffolding over the plunge pool so he could Jumar his way up and get to the top of the falls. And eventually, to the cheers of us all, he did it. And he tied the rope up on the top there, came back down. He had no interest in exploring what the new discovery up there. He just wanted to conquer the waterfall.
John was also becoming more and more aware of the potential for local archaeology. His discovery of so many coffin caves was now also attracting a lot of interest from other archaeologists.
One slip down here is basically death. Maybe a broken neck if you're lucky. The main coffin in the back room here, which is the upper cave, the Gorman Spirit Cave, has a large section broken out from the centre of the coffin. If we have a close look, you can see teeth marks there, rat or porcupine. The marks from the metal tools are still visible on the outside of the coffin. The coffin head from the main coffin in the back of the room here in the upper cave is rounded. The other half of this coffin had a double head. There was a smaller coffin supported on a very rough Y-shaped stick here. It's been planted near the other coffin. This spirit cave. The people who lived here didn't live here at this time of the year. It was covered in all these little bugs everywhere. Some sections are quite obvious, other sections are a little mixed up. There's been holes dug in there, there's ash layers, there's layers of different colours. We're finding a few things. We found a couple of pieces of bone, one flake tool, and lots of charcoal. One has found a bone about 10 centimetres below the surface here. She thinks it might be the hip bone of the small child. Should be very interesting. Here we have a large number of tools and flakes. There's many smaller flakes. Some of these are probably the waste product from tool manufacture. And like in most of the sites around here, these tools are exposed and we can find them easily because there has been a more erosion than soil accumulation on these hilltop sites. There are many different types of tools. Many of the pointed tools, such as this one, we notice they have blunted ends from damage through use, and other tools that may have been used for scraping, cutting or chopping also have visible edge damage along at least one edge. Some of the small flakes are also possibly reworked and used. This one here is a typical pointed tool, or also with a damaged point. This may have been used as a spearhead. The thing that's really kept me going is that whole thrill of discovery, the idea of going somewhere where no human's ever been before. Eventually, through the Australian caves, it taught me so much. I learned about the biology, the archaeology, the geology, just the way things are formed, and I read up about them, and it's an amazing coverage of every little aspect of science, and so you can discover things every day. You can go out and find something new. One of the highlights of my caving was the discovery of Tum Milana, which turned out to be a world-class, beautifully decorated cave. And with this Lahu man, this hunter, we hacked our way with machetes through this quite jungle terrain down to where the stream come out. And I said, well, let's walk over the rocks again and see if there's a hole. And sure enough, there was a hole. And the Lahu man said, I know this hole. My brother was hunting here last week and he shot a bear, but he wounded it and the bear went inside that thing, and we don't know if it ever come out. And you know, we've never gone in there, we're too scared. And I could hear the stream inside. So I didn't really translate everything to the group of people I was going to take inside this cave with me, but we got in there, and sure enough, there's this rather easy stream passage. So we're about 400 meters up inside the stream passage, and what do we hear? This heavy splashing, like some wounded bear thrashing through the stream up around the corner from us. So we froze, you know, we didn't know whether to lie down and pretend to be dead, hide behind rocks, or turn out our torches, leave them on. You know, I was all like, whoa, what are we going to do? So we're all, you know, up on the side of the cavern there, hiding behind rocks and sitting in the dark, and this splashing kept going on. So I said, look, I've got to go around and have a look. So I took my torch up there, and I just get around the corner, and then suddenly there's this really loud splashing right behind me. So I go, fuck, you know, it's like, God. And it was a big fish in very shallow water that sort of, we'd scared them. They were splashing their way up the stream passage.
The entrance to Tum Milana may not have been so impressive, but the cave inside certainly was. The full exploration will take many years, often using visitors from Cave Lodge. This cave, for the first time, could be fully traversed, 12 kilometres from sink to rising. It had everything. Hungry to explore, John began to take his more able visitors on 2-day trips through the cave, camping in the depths, and often help him with pure exploration. It was an experience none of them would forget.
Probably my favourite cave. It has, there's a lot of history in it for me. I've been through it 40, 50 times, I don't know. It's many times. I've been in there a lot. I know it pretty well, every rock and every little place in the stream there, but you can still find new things in there. I go in there regularly, take photographs and just enjoy its beauty, because it's very pristine. It's a stunning cave, and yeah, it's one of the highlights of my exploration here.
John had carved out an exciting and rewarding life for himself here in the remote north of Thailand, but he was soon to find out that things could all too easily go very wrong.